this was some of the creepiest shit in this movie. And she's listening to Time of My Life. That's the song from Dirty Dancing.
Mm-hmm.
That she's listening to Dirty Dancing is not the creepy part. Is that she's eating Fruit Loops dry and she's drinking milk through a straw.
I don't know what to say to that part. Like,
good morning, my neighbors!
Damn! His mama named him Clay. I'ma call him Clay.
Mm-hmm.
One band, one sound.
Ricky! Sit your $5 ass down before I make change.
I like the way you die, boy.
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. Wakanda forever!
Welcome to WAP at the Movies. That's right, the Well Actually Podcast at the Movies. Our podcast series that celebrates, dissects, reimagines, reexamines Black cinema. I am joined by a good friend of the show, a repeat guest now, Bayo. How you doing?
what's going on, man? Thanks for having me back, man.
Yeah, of course. Bayo was on the Drumline episode, so make sure you go check that out. Before we move any further, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, review wherever you get your podcasts, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening through Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Give us 5-star reviews. It'll help make sure that other people can get to see this. We're going to jump right into it. And this week's episode is, honestly, it's our highest rated movie according to critics.
Wow.
And it is the 2017 dark comedy / psychological horror, Get Out. All right, so the synopsis. I just want to see if... So I'll let you grade both the synopsis and the taglines. So the synopsis. Now that Chris and his girlfriend Rose have reached the meet the parents milestone of dating, she invites him for a weekend getaway with Missy and Dean, her parents. At first, Chris reads the family's over-accommodating behavior as nervous attempts to deal with their daughter's interracial relationship. But as the weekend progresses, a series of increasingly disturbing discoveries leads him to a truth that he never could have imagined.
Yeah, I mean that's an A rating because it the movie touched up on all that from the beginning to the end. So,
all right. So now our taglines: just because you're invited doesn't mean you're welcome.
yeah.
Second one. Let me give you the second one. Do you belong in this neighborhood?
No.
So first one's better.
I like the first one. Oh, you know what? No, I like the first one. But that's my personal opinion, obviously. So,
all right. So now let's get into the cast, and we have Daniel Kaluuya as Chris. We know him. I'm just gonna go through some of the other stuff he's been in that you might recognize him from. A lot of people knew him first from that episode of Black Mirror, and I think even Jordan Peele saw him there as well. He was in Sicario. He had a small role there. He was in Black Panther.
mm-hmm.
He was in Widows, Queen and Slim, and then he won his Oscar for Judas and the Black Messiah.
Beautiful movie.
And then he hooked up again with Jordan Peele again in Nope. Then we have Allison Williams, who plays Rose, and I guess she's most famous for her stint on Girls. That's an HBO show. She was also in a series of unfortunate events, a horror movie called Megan, and most recently she was in Fellow Travelers. And also, did you know that she was the daughter of Brian Williams, the former MSNBC anchor?
No way. Oh man, you can't. Can you say nepotism with that? Because technically,
I mean, she's not even a big star right now. So,
no.
What exactly did? Yeah. So then we have Bradley Whitford as Dean. That's Rose's dad. He was in 200 episodes of The West Wing. Most recently, he's in The Handmaid's Tale, and he has done a lot of voice acting work. Like, I think he has like over 50 credits as just a voice actor.
Wow.
Yeah. Then we have Catherine Keener as Missy, as Rose's mom. I think a lot of people got introduced to her in The 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Yes.
Steve Carell's love interest. But she's an acclaimed actress in her own right. So she has Oscar nominations for being John Malkovich and Capote. So she has 2 Oscar nominations.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's the one with. I think it's the one with Philip Seymour Hoffman, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
Then Lil Rel, he was on The Carmichael Show. He was on 5 episodes of Insecure. He was in Tag, Uncle Drew, and Bird Box.
Back then it was Big Rel, now it's Lil Rel.
Yeah.
He's like
Yeah.
slimmer than anything.
Yeah. And then he had his own TV show, Rel. I think that had about 12 episodes.
Yeah.
Then I don't want to get into the rest of the cast because it's like it. When we see those people, it's sort of like I don't want to spoil the surprise for the rest of them.
I was gonna say like there's a major one that you
yeah. I mean, but we start the movie off there. So
yeah. Okay.
The director is Jordan Peele. This was his directorial debut. He also gave us Us and Nope, and he was also the writer. To get Us, Nope again. He was a writer on Mad TV. He was a writer and one of the performers on Key and Peele. He wrote Keanu, Weird City, the reboot of Twilight Zone, and Candyman.
I
think came out like 3 years ago. Yeah, so he did a little bit of the comedy stuff and then just went all in on the horror.
All in, yeah.
All right, so the budget for this movie was $4.5 million.
What? How?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
With all those actors?
Yeah. So I think because it was a Blumhouse production, so I think they're notorious for having low budgets and like outperforming their budgets. So I think what they do is they offer a lot of like back end stuff like profit participation, things like that.
Okay.
And, yeah. So and now you can see how much profit there was. So like I said,
I was going to say
$4.5 million budget, and in the domestic box office, it made $176 million.
That's not a bad bad profit.
I mean, it made over 7 times the budget in just the opening weekend. So yeah, not bad profit at all. And worldwide, it made $255.8 million.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to get to the review portion of things. And before we get to that, just leave us a review in the comments. Or, matter of fact, instead of leaving a review, just give us the name of a movie you'd like us to do in a future episode. The only criteria is that it has to be a Black movie. It doesn't even necessarily have to be like a majority Black cast, as long as it has a Black story, has something to Black cinema, and we'll try our best to get to it. All right, so I'm going according to Rotten Tomato scores. So the critic scores for Rotten Tomato, 98% on 403 reviews.
Jeez.
That's for the critics. And the audience score was 86% on over 50,000 reviews.
That's amazing. 50,000, you got 86 average, because audience are brutal. Like,
yeah. Wow. And for the longest, it was actually on 100% for the critic score on Rotten Tomatoes for at least the first year. And then, of course, some people had to come ruin the show.
Of course. They can't have a perfect score, but if you stayed 100, it makes sense, because that was a good movie.
All right, so I'm going to go through some of the positive and then the negative reviews. So from Dominic Griffin, from The Deceased, with great buzz and nearly universal acclaim, critics may worry about overselling Get Out, but the film truly is one of the funniest comedies, scariest horror films, and most assured cinematic debuts in recent memory.
Totally agree. Totally.
Okay. All right, this one is from Richard Roper from the Chicago Sun-Times, one of the OGs. Peele has created a work that addresses the myriad levels of racism, pays homage to some great horror films, carves out its own creative path, has a distinctive visual style, and is flat out funny as well.
Yeah, Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
All right, and our final positive review is from one of the sistren. Her name is Aramide Tinubu of Shadow and Act. Yeah, hey man, hey
Tinubu.
if I see a Nigerian name there, I'm gonna include it. So Get Out forces white viewers, particularly liberals, to confront their own racist views while eviscerating those who continue to proclaim all lives matter as black and brown bodies pile up at their feet.
Jeez,
Damn,
intense, but yeah.
she went there.
Yeah, I was going to say it's quite intense, but
I
you
mean,
can't disagree.
yeah, it was necessary. It was necessary.
That was an intense reveal, but
Yeah.
that's spot on.
Okay. So now for the negative reviews. And you
What?
yeah, I found some. I managed to find some. This is from Louisa Moore from Screen Zealots. This movie could have been a trailblazing original commentary on race relations. It's a good idea, but it's poorly executed.
No comment, because I don't. Yeah, no comment. I don't see it.
Mhm.
What more do you want from that execution?
Just you know what? You ask a question, you're gonna get your answer. This is from Monica Reed of the Far Out magazine. Where the film fails is in the actual structure of the story, which is riddled with inconsistencies, gaping holes in the plot, and what seems to be a mid-plot shift from one story to a completely different one.
Yeah, that's Jordan Peele like classic. That's what Jordan Peele does. Like you can see in all this movie during that and after that too as well. So yes, at the beginning nobody expected the turnaround, the intense turnaround. Like
Yeah,
it got dark real quick.
yeah, it did. But like she's putting that as a criticism.
Which don't make sense. You gotta be that. Maybe she needs to stay out.
Oh wow!
I mean, our companies were far out. She got out, and
All
no, it
right,
was a good one.
all right. The final one. This is from Jeff Beck of the Blue Spot. Jordan Peele's Get Out contains a fascinating idea and some intriguing social commentary, but it's ultimately let down by bland execution and writing that never allows the idea to come to full fruition.
I've had people put words together and then say, "Take it," because what you just said don't make sense. To me, I'm sorry. Like it doesn't make sense. Like essentially, the movie touched from the beginning, like the subplot. It gave you the plot, even before the plot, which you will talk about. It gave you the preface before we get to the point, and then when it got to the action part, or I know there's a better word than action. You got it. There was no like bar none. It was just this is it, and you're gonna get the full extent of the action. So it doesn't make sense.
It does. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. But yeah, I like showcasing some of these reviews so that people who are watching along, listening, can see that some people get it, some people don't, and we're not necessarily just here overpraising these movies. Like there's going to be a little bit of pushback, regardless of how we might feel. Just because we like the movies doesn't mean like it's universal acclaim or universal praise. Although Get Out was very close to 100%.
Yeah, I mean, and also it's not a documentary. It's not a social commentary. It's a movie because if you want to use it as a documentary social commentary, then it has to be realistic, and it is not. Although, anyways, we'll talk about it, the experiments, etc. That's not real life. But for the movie itself, called Get Out, it was a great storyline and a plot and fine execution.
All right. So now on to the feature presentation. We start off with LaKeith Stanfield.
There we go.
Yeah, walking in a poorly lit neighborhood, and it sounds like he's talking to his girl on the phone, and he's a little turned around. He's kind of lost. You know how suburbs be, and then a white sports car drives past him, and then it makes a U-turn and like starts to like drive up slowly next to him, and he starts talking to himself like, "Keep walking, bro. Don't do nothing stupid." And then he turns around abruptly. Like it's the thing they tell you to do if you feel like someone's following you. Just turn around abruptly, like so that I could surprise whoever it is. And then the car stops. So he, after like a couple paces, he looks back to see that the car stopped in the middle of the street, but the driver's door is open. And then out of nowhere, some dude in a mask just jumps him and chokes him out, puts him in the trunk.
And speaking of, you didn't give LaKeith his credit. You got this is the first I mentioned, but yeah, I mean, that's literally us growing up in in Newark. If you miss your bus from school, hey, listen, you gotta walk with on the swivel, left, right, man.
Time I watched this movie, I didn't see this scene. Like I got to the theater
No,
late. Yeah, I got to the theater late. So I walked in during the opening credits. So whatever like happens later on, like I didn't know LaKeith was in the movie at all.
oh, so when you
Yeah,
saw him for the first time, like,
yeah,
what is this guy?
yeah. Yeah. So all right, opening credits. So Childish Gambino's Red Bone is playing. Then we get a little slideshow of photographs in the apartment to establish that Chris is a photographer. Rose is picking up pastries and coffee. They're trying to establish that she's like this really good girlfriend, dutiful and all that. And then she gets to the apartment and she goes to knock on the door, but both of her hands are full. So she kind of knocks with her forehead, I guess to make her even seem more likable or whatever. Chris opens the door. Then they kiss. So now they're running through a checklist of things as Chris packs his luggage. And at some point, like you can tell that she's uneasy about something. So no, that he's uneasy about something. And she asks him, like, what's wrong? And he asks her, do they know I'm black?
I love how he casted it like the darkest person.
Yeah,
You don't get darker than Daniel.
Yeah, ain't no beige, ain't no caramel, ain't no tan.
No room for error. This is it. Like, do they know I'm black?
Mm-hmm. And she points out like how weird it would be to inform them that her black boyfriend is coming to visit. And then he brings up how she told him he's the first black guy she ever dated.
You know what's so crazy? Like the fact that we watched the movie.
Everybody was like, yeah,
Yeah, Lord. Especially watching the second time, like, man, he has no idea what's coming.
Yeah. And he says he doesn't want to get chased off the lawn with a shotgun. He says that's not possible because her dad would have voted for Obama a third time if he could have. And she goes out of her way to mention that her family's not racist and she wouldn't have invited him if they were.
I mean, were they racist though? It was like different level.
I mean, that is some commentary we can do at the end. We don't want to jump ahead.
Yeah.
So now they're in a car and like driving to the parents' place, and Chris pulls out a cigarette, and Rose takes it from him and throws it out the window. And he says, "You basically just threw out $1." And he said, "That's what you get for spending $1 on nicotine." So he says he needs to call his friend Rod, played by Lil Rel, and he's a TSA agent. And he's telling Chris about an old lady that he had to pat down. And he said, and I quote, "The next 9/11 is going to be on some geriatric shit." So I mean,
man, it was funny for his limited scenes or limited role. It was really funny. Like,
but they're establishing off the top that he's like the comic on like giving us a little bit of comic relief.
Yeah.
So he thanks Rod for watching his dog, and Rod asks to speak to Rose. And jokingly, he tells her that she picked the wrong friend, and she tells him that this is all a long play for her to get him in the end. And then Rod also mentioned that he advised Chris not to go to the white girl's parents' house. What is she doing? Licking your balls? And then Chris hangs up. Rose teases Chris of being jealous, and out of nowhere, a deer runs in front of the car and they hit it. They swerve a bit and then they pull over. They're a bit shaken up, but they're okay. So they step out of the car to assess the damage. Busted headlight, broken side mirror. It's funny. I think that was actually right around the time I was actually in a car that hit a deer once. But somebody else was driving. Yeah, somebody else was driving. I think it was when I was.
Was it a white person?
Funny enough, it was a white guy. It was someone I was working with.
Oh Lord!
Yeah, we were on our way. I was when I was working in one of these like old school locations, not old school necessarily, but like one of these places where we were staying was far from the location. So the hotel they put us up in was far from the hospital we're working at.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was our, I guess, our carpool driver. And we're driving like 5 a.m., 4:35 a.m. in like a 2-lane road in the middle of like forest on one side, forest on the other side. And boom, dude didn't even stop.
What?
Dude didn't stop. I was riding shotgun. Dude didn't stop. He kept going.
What was his reason for not stopping?
He's like, bro, we gotta go to work. What do you mean? What's up?
What if he hit somebody instead of a deer? He's just like, you know what?
Luckily, we like I was like dozing in and out of sleep, but I saw it was a deer. So
Okay, Master, we got work to do.
Yeah, we gotta go to work, bro. And then like he didn't even call it in until much later. And then they like because it was a rental car, they gave him a new rental and like oh yeah, be careful.
As long as the car is drivable, because imagine getting stuck in that area at that time, middle of nowhere.
Yeah, so, So Chris goes to find the deer, and he basically stares at it until it dies. Next thing, police shows up, and they're telling them that the appropriate number to call is for animal control services. Then the cop asks them if they're from the city, and explain how they're visiting her parents. The cop then asks to see Chris's driver's license, and he says he has state ID. I guess New Yorkers, a lot of them don't necessarily have driver's license. No. And then Rose gets indignant because she's like, he wasn't driving, so there's no need to see his ID. And at that point,
playing that role.
Yeah, so at that point, I'm like, okay, I see you being an ally. Look at your white privilege for good or whatever.
She's down.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's good to be white because she was talking to the cop like anyhow. She was like, this is bullshit. She was, and the cop was just like sitting there taking it, like he wasn't even like offended or anyhow. I was like,
that's called white privilege, you know. But she's fighting for it compared to just sit back and let whatever happen play out, and then
So the cop
you know how that goes.
Yes, the cop tries to explain how it's within his right to ask for ID, and he says it's bullshit. Eventually, he lets them go. So now they're back in the car, and Chris says, that was hot. And she says, I'm not going to let anyone fuck with my man.
Except me. Anyway.
So they pull up to the house. And honestly, I feel like house is underselling it. Like that was an estate.
Yes.
And they made sure like they kept a wide shot of the house so that you could see like the surroundings and everything.
That's old money right there.
Yeah. So the parents, Missy and Dean, they came out. And we get some awkward introductions, awkward hugging. They tell the parents how they hit a deer, and Dean, the father, is just like basically is like, to hell with all deer. Like he's basically going on a rant about like they did a good thing by hitting the deer. Like, what? Honestly,
when that scene happened, when the parents got introduced, I was like, okay, it's getting like we had the preface. Now this is the second stage, of the nonsense that's about to happen, because it was weird the entire movie. Like it didn't change.
So Dean offers to give Chris a tour. Like that's how you know it's a big ass house, when they offer to give you a tour. Because in a regular house they just point and say that's where that room is, that's where that. When they're like giving a tour, like okay,
we have an upstairs, the 2 rooms down here. But if you're doing you're right.
So all right, so now so then the tour starts, and Dean is telling Chris that Missy is a psychiatrist, and then he shows some family pictures on the wall, and they see that Rose has a little brother, Jeremy. He's going to show up a little bit later, and it says, so he's like showing like all these like knickknacks and stuff that he brought from his travels. He says such a privilege to get to experience another person's culture. I'm like, okay, that's some foreshadowing right there. Then he points to a picture on the wall, and he claims that that's his dad's claim to fame. He was a sprinter who got beaten by Jesse Owens in the qualifying rounds of the Berlin Olympics in 1936. That's the one that was in front of Hitler and all that.
I feel like that's what started the whole.
Yes.
You know what?
It must have.
It
But
gotta be.
I mean, speaking of the Olympics, like we just finished like watching the Olympics and all that.
Yeah.
And I just caught it. Like they beat him in the qualifying rounds. Dude didn't even make it to the finals. Like, and that's something that stuck with him.
Like, yeah, I can't get to the finals of this black guy. Gotcha.
Bruh, like, but that's the funny thing. Like, if it's qualifying rounds, he wasn't the only person that beat you, bro. Enough people beat you that you didn't even make it out of the qualifying round.
But back then, there was that superior complex that white was stronger and faster than until start beating them, beating them and everything.
Yeah, and then he says how his dad almost got over it. Another bit of foreshadowing, almost.
Almost.
Then they walk past the basement. And it says it's sealed because of black mold. I'm like, okay, like the signs just keep showing up. And then we see Georgina. That's their black housekeeper. Yeah, she did a good job in her.
I was about to say she earned that money, whatever. Yeah, she was awesome, and I'm glad she got some roles after it too.
Oh yeah, no, she got a bunch of roles after that for sure.
Yeah.
And that Georgina, she was played by Betty Gabriel. So that was one of the people I didn't want to like spoil that there. So now Dean says that he loves how the nearest house is across the lake, that they have total privacy.
No noise, please. When we start doing some weird cultish stuff, don't worry about it.
Yeah,
we don't need you to come around.
So Dean says he knows how it looks, a white family having black staff, but they were hired to look after his parents. But after they died, they didn't have the heart to let them go. And then, of course, he gives us another version of, I would have voted for Obama a third time if I could. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So then they're sitting around the table, and Rose's parents ask Chris what his parents do. And he tells them that his dad isn't in the picture, and his mom died when he was 11. And I don't know if this is a Caucasian thing, but then she goes ahead and asks, so how did she die? I'm like, bro, you just let that go. Like,
yeah, you don't ask. You just
why are you prying at this point?
Yeah. And you see your parents pass, that's just
yeah,
the rest of the stuff. That's it.
Yeah. And like, how did she die? And it says hit and run. And then he explains how he didn't want to talk about it. And Missy says, that's okay, we don't have to talk about it. But then she taps her glass 3 times with the spoon. And then Chris is a little shaky. And Dean asks him if he smokes, because he's like, oh, is it like he's a little jittery? He's like, knocking on the table a bit. He says he's trying to quit. Dean says Missy could help him, like he could take care of that through hypnosis. And he's like, he looks kind of skeptical. He's like, smoker or not, they're happy to have him here for the get together. And then Rose is surprised, like, what get together? Like, yeah, the get together is this weekend. It's literally the same date every year.
And she played the role so good. Like, so at some point I was believing her, like she didn't want it, but then at some point I'm like, you
keep. I kept, even though I had seen it, I kept that thought until like it just seemed, she did a really good
like this is a good one. Like I want to keep this one.
Yeah. So like, smoker or not, they're happy to have him. So Georgina comes out to refill everyone's iced tea. And as she's refilling Chris's glass, she enters some sort of trance and then like jolts herself back to reality. She apologizes, and Missy tells her to go lay down and get some rest. And then
go recalibrate, please.
Then Jeremy walks in. He's like, oh, so nobody's going to answer the door or anything, because they were sitting in the backyard. So now they're sitting at the dinner table. They're telling some old family stories about when Jeremy and Rose were kids or younger, not necessarily kids, and doing all sorts of bad stuff when their parents weren't around. I was like
kidnapping black folks.
They didn't go that far. They're talking about making out with some people and how Rose bit the first guy that slipped her tongue because she wasn't used to it. And it was just, I was like, these are the conversations y'all have? I was like, must be nice. So Dean asked Chris what's his sport, and he says basketball. Then Jeremy asked Chris if he's into MMA, and the rest of the family's like, nah, chill, Jeremy. Like, don't bring that stuff here now.
Jeremy's a psycho. That's like
he's like, you're bringing all this stuff out too early. Like, bro, what's going on? And he's like, oh, what's the problem? Like, he's trying to get to know the guy that's dating his sister. And Chris says UFC is too brutal for him. And Jeremy says to Chris, with your frame and your genetic makeup, if you really pushed your body, you'd be a beast.
We know what that means. You know, you know what you're alluding to, the black genetics. I want your body.
So up to this point, I was like, everything else you could have just explained it away as, awkwardness. But this is where it started to take a turn. I'm like,
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, like there's a lot of prying question about your history, makeup, genetics, and what kind of sports you do. Because if you really do sports, maybe I need to get me a body like yours or something.
So Missy walks back in with a carrot cake. So Jeremy says the thing about jujitsu is strength doesn't matter. It's a strategic game, like chess.
Yeah.
Jeremy tells Chris to stand up, like he's about to put them paws on him. And Chris says he has a rule against play fighting with drunk dudes.
Oh.
And then Missy sternly says Jeremy's name. And then he stops. Like almost like the super soldier, like just stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, I wasn't going to hurt him. So now Rose and Chris are up in the bedroom, and Rose is brushing her teeth and talking about how her folks were wilding. And Chris is like, And she asks Chris, like, she asks if Chris has anything to add to the conversation. And he's like, I told you so. It's like, I told you it was going to be awkward as hell. Like everything was going to center around his blackness, and every conversation was going to be.
The man was already getting creeped out already, and I don't blame him. Like he's not. Yeah, people offer him something to drink. He's just like, let me just ask you all these questions. Like, come on, I need to see how you feel.
He says he didn't want to say it, but yeah, I told you so. So now Rose is trying to apologize, and she apologizes. Then they kiss, and then. In the middle of all that, I was like, I had to remind myself, they're in her parents' house.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that kissing did not end at kissing, because when they wake up, like we see Rose is half naked, and then I'm like, I'm married. I don't think I can do
it. Also, remember, it's not a house, it's a huge mansion. Who's to say whatever room they at is like so like far and quiet away from everybody else? But then I get it. You can never get comfortable enough to just.
Yeah, and they would they would go. I was like, okay, at least they had the decency to not show us that they were going at it or whatever. But
she did it the last ride before everything changes. She really liked the guy.
Yes, now. So Chris is having a hard time sleeping, so he takes his cigarettes and goes downstairs. As he goes to smoke one, he sees a figure running right at him, like full speed. And it's the groundskeeper. And at the last moment, he turns and runs into the darkness. Chris is a little shaken up. And then he looks up towards the house, and he sees Georgina seemingly just staring out the window. Staring out the window, adjusting her hair. But when we see it from the inside, we can see that she's just looking at her reflection. She's really enjoying her black hair.
Like, man, I don't gotta do a lot of work for this hair.
So now Chris goes back in the house, and Missy turns on the light. I'm like, okay, that was creepy. You were just sitting in the darkness waiting for him to come in. Then she asks him, does he know how dangerous smoking is? So she asks him.
We know why they don't want him to smoke.
I mean, now we do.
Now we do.
Like, y'all are very conscious about this stuff. Like, okay. So she asks him to come into her office. So they talk about hypnosis, and Chris says, oh, so you just dangle a pocket watch in front of people's faces? And he says they use focal points to guide someone into a state of heightened suggestibility. And in the middle of all this, she's stirring like the tea in a teacup.
The infamous tea.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, did you try that after the movie on anybody?
I stayed away from T after that. I stayed
I
away.
ain't gonna lie, man. I've tried a couple times. We were like,
And
wait,
just
let me
that
see.
stirring. You thought that was
Stuff
gonna
like
work?
talking to it'll work with somebody, but yeah, it didn't work.
No hypnosis by T.
No, you need to be more expert in more than just.
Oh my god! I can imagine you at a bar ordering tea.
Yeah, let me get a tea, and I need that metal spoon, please. I don't need that plastic fork.
So Missy asks if he smokes in front of Rose, and he says he's going to quit. Then Missy asks Chris about his mother, and as at that point, he's like, "Wait, are we?" So he kind of caught on, like, "Are we in the middle of hypnosis right now?" But it was already too late for that.
It's too late, man. You have no idea.
So then she starts to press him on his mother's death. He says he doesn't want to talk about it, and then the spoon on the cup is getting louder, and Chris is starting to relive details. And Missy asks him if he thinks it was his fault. She asks him how he feels now, and he says he can't move. She said, "Yeah."
Crying too.
She's like, "Yeah, you're paralyzed, like the day when you did nothing." I'm like, "Bro, what?"
Woo!
That was harsh as hell.
That's the third plot. Like, all right, y'all had the second plot. Now we getting into it.
Then she says, "Now sink into the floor, sink," and then we get like the.
Have you ever had sleep paralysis before? Bro,
too often. It's yeah.
That's exactly what it is, and it's the most scariest thing ever. Yeah.
Yeah. So now he's staring up at her like through a TV screen. You can't really tell if he's like underwater or out in space, but all we know is that he's stuck, and there's tears streaming down his face. She crouches in front of him, and she says,
"Now you're in the sunken place."
And you just remember back then, like that phrase took over all of pop culture.
Yes,
there were even black celebrities that were accusing of being in the sunken place. So then she closes his eyes, and then he suddenly wakes up in bed. I'm like, okay. Then he gets an alert on his phone, and it's his boy Rel sending him. I'm saying Rel, but Rod. Sending him a picture of his dog drunk. He plugs in his phone. So they make sure to show us that he plugs in his phone, and then he goes outside to photograph some wildlife. So now he's walking back towards the house, and he sees Georgina through a window, and she's doing something weird with her hair. Again, the fascination with her hair. So he looks through the camera to get like a magnified look at her, and then she suddenly looks at his direction, and then he pretends like he's taking a picture of something else. He looks back up, and she's gone. Then we see the groundskeeper chopping wood, and Chris goes to introduce himself, and the guy says his name is Walter, and he says, "Oh, he apologizes for scaring him last night while he was doing his exercise."
And the man was just excited to be in the black. Let me see how fast I can go and.
He also mentioned that Chris was in Missy's office for a long time, that hopefully it worked. I'm like, wait, what? What do you? So not only did you know he was being hypnotized, like you were watching, and you are hoping for a successful hypnotism. So it was just an extremely performance from top to bottom.
Yes, absolutely.
He's talking about like, Rose is one of a kind. I'm like, bro, are you?
Oh, for a groundskeeper, you're very in tune with with the family.
So Chris goes back to the bedroom, and he tells Rose that he thinks her mom hypnotized him last night, and he went to get some air. He says he can't remember most of it, but now the thought of a cigarette makes him want to throw up.
And
like,
they got you.
Yeah, he got him. He also tells Rose that the groundskeeper Walter is kind of weird, and he might be into her, but she thinks it's all a joke. Like, what do you mean he might be into me? Because she knows who Walter is. Like, what do you mean? And my observation from that scene is she is wearing the biggest boxers known to man. Like, it wasn't boxer briefs, bro. These are the type of shorts that marathon runners wear. Like, they were baggy. That's the best way to describe it.
She was wearing the boxers back in our day, technically.
They were baggy boxers. So cut to the front of the house, and a bunch of black cars start pulling up, and the groundskeeper Walter is greeting all of the guests personally. Like they all seem to be very friendly. Like, oh, okay, maybe they all know him. It's like this is something.
Maybe this guy's is important for a groundskeeper. Just maybe.
Yeah. So now Chris and Rose are walking through the get together, and she's telling him to smile. It's like it's just one of those. I think we've all been there at a party where you don't know anybody except one person, and you're feeling extremely awkward because like this was supposed to be a chill weekend with your girlfriend and her family, and now all these people pulling up.
That's me at all event in South Carolina. Literally. Like, yeah, I got my wife with me, but yeah, that's about it. It was all right. Okay.
So Chris is being introduced to different guests, and they're just they all show like varying levels of inappropriateness. One wants to see his golf swing. The next couple asks Rose if it is better, and then she feels on Chris's arms. Then the next guy says fairer skin has been in charge, but now black is in fashion.
That is so cringe, man. Yeah, honestly, I can tell what was going on that scene once I start seeing those questions. But yeah, I'm sure once you say the next scene, yeah, at that point I was like, okay, I know what's going on.
So Chris excuses himself and says he's going to take some pictures. Then he sees LaKeith. And he says, it's nice to see another brother around here. Then an older white woman comes up to him to sort of like give a little bit of introduction on his behalf. He offers a fist bump, and LaKeith goes to give him a handshake, and he just holds on to Chris's fist. They walk away, and LaKeith basically shows off to the new group of white folks. I'm like, is he showing off his outfit? Is it weight loss? Like, what exactly is he showing? But he's like parading himself in front of them. Like,
yeah,
okay, that is something to watch. All right, so Chris wanders away, and he meets someone sitting in one of their many arranged chairs. It almost seems like the chairs were set up for like a garden wedding.
Yeah.
So he introduces himself as Jim Hudson, a blind art dealer. He's played by this actor named Stephen Root. He was Milton in Office Space. He was Gordon in Dodgeball, and for you HBO heads, he was Fuchs in Barry.
Oh no, I have never watched that.
You haven't watched Barry?
No, but I remember how which one you said Dodgeball. That was really good.
That's the way. If you could dodge a wrench, you could dodge a ball.
Yeah.
All right. So Jim tells Chris he's a fan of his work, and Chris is like, you're blind, right? And he's like, yeah. He has his assistant describe the pictures to him, and he explains that he was a photographer before he lost his vision to a genetic disease. And I was like, okay, is he supposed to be one of the good guys here?
He played the part though.
Yeah,
I thought he was a good guy.
Yeah, it's like he has such an appreciation for what Chris does rather than physical traits and all that. So Chris walks back to the house, and as he walks up the stairs, all of the guests immediately go quiet. And that lets me know that if you're downstairs, you can hear what's going on in their room, in their bedroom.
Oh.
So again, whatever they were doing in that bedroom, everyone in the house heard it.
Rose is such a dirtbag. It's like I gotta get one up before the shit show.
Yeah. So now he's back in the bedroom, and his phone is unplugged from the charger.
Again.
So Chris suspects that Georgina unplugged it. Rose walked into the room and wonders where he has been because he left her alone. I'm like, oh, so now you're the victim? It's like Chris tells her he wanted to call Rod, but his phone is dead, and suspects that Georgina unplugged it. He says maybe Georgina doesn't like the fact that he's dating Rose, and she just dismisses it like, get over yourself, bro. So Chris finally calls Rod and tells him how uneasy the whole place makes him feel because like they haven't met black people who don't work for them. Like no one. Yeah. And then he tells Rod that Rose's mom hypnotized him. And the weirdest part of it all is that it worked. And Rod says, I don't care if she's an Iyanla. She ain't going to fix my life. Rod says that they might have had Chris barking like a dog or flying like a pigeon. And you know white people like having black sex slaves.
Hey, he ain't never wrong in that movie from the beginning. He just felt it.
It sounded outlandish at the start, but it's like, So it's like, okay, we keep going. And then Rod goes into a very explicit but compelling thesis, likening them to Jeffrey Dahmer. He's like, it's talking about like nobody suspected it, and then all those things were happening, and Chris hangs up. So Georgina walks in and startles Chris. She came to apologize for touching his phone, and at that point, I'm like, her eyes are so wide. Like it was just like I think like she was doing that on purpose because like that's what was going to make her tear up. So she had to keep her eyes open, like extremely.
I never thought about it like that way. I just thought like she was just like glitching and trying to.
No, but that's so she was glitching because of something he mentioned, and then like you could see that she almost like because he said that when he gets around a lot of white people, he gets nervous, and that's when she sort of glitches, and then she almost cracks. Like you could see, like there was a little bit of recognition.
Yeah.
And see, like a tear rolling down her eyes, and then she was like, "No, no, 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 no." And then she said, "They treat us like family," and then she walks out. So Chris walks downstairs, and Dean introduces him to a bunch of guests, and a Japanese guest asks him if being African American is an advantage or disadvantage in today's society, and. Coincidentally, like LaKeith is walking by, and Chris tells him to tackle the question, and then he goes, he goes on to this like circuitous answer, and which ends with him being a homebody and how he does chores and stuff. So as he's talking, Chris tries to like sneak a picture of him, and his the flash was on, and then LaKeith just freezes. He develops a nosebleed.
Yep.
And then he yells at Chris to get out.
Boy, I usually only get this excited when they say the title of a movie in the movie. He said it. He said
it. Run for your life.
He eventually gets taken by Jeremy and some other guests into another room. And then Dean, who's supposed to be like a neurologist or a neurosurgeon, explains that seizures create anxiety. That seizures create anxiety, and which can trigger aggression. So they're blaming all that on a seizure. And then they say the flash set him off. And so basically making Chris feel like a piece of shit. Like that was all you, bro. You did that. So LaKeith and Missy emerge from a room, and he apologizes for all the commotion he caused. And he thanks Missy for fixing him up. He says he has to leave, and they tell him to go get some rest. That's the second time they're telling someone to go get some rest.
They got to do the hypnotism again to kind of get them back on track.
Yeah, then they say they want to get the party back on with sparklers and bingo. I thought that was just like a euphemism. Like, no, they eventually play bingo. So Rose says she's going to take Chris for a walk. So it was I guess there was like a knowing look around the room when she said she was going to take him for a walk. So Chris
was ready, man. They're excited, man. It's like, well, why are we delaying this, man? Come on, I like this guy.
Once someone said bingo and she said take for a walk, everyone just snapped into place. So Chris and Rose are by a lake, and Chris tells her that it's going to sound strange, but he feels like he knows Logan, and that's the character played by LaKeith.
Yeah.
We see Dean standing in front of a gazebo holding up a finger, and then cut back to Chris saying that the hypnosis didn't work and it's making him have messed up thoughts. Then we cut back to Dean, and we see the guests holding up their bingo cards.
Silent auction.
Yeah. So, and then Chris says he needs to go. And then Rose says, "Oh, so you want to go without me?" Cut back to Dean. Now the full picture comes into view. There's a portrait of Chris there right next to him. And you see that the bingo game actually is a silent auction. Then Dean goes from raising one finger to raising 10 fingers, and the winning bidder is the blind guy from earlier.
Of course.
Chris tells Rose about the night his mom died, that he didn't go out to look for her or call the police, that it turns out she survived the initial hit and she died in the street hours later, cold and alone, while he was watching TV. Tells Rose that she's all he's got and he's not going to abandon her.
She's horrible. After hearing, they can't be like, you know what? I need you to escape. Like, come on, man. Let me get you out of here.
Bro, I didn't think about like I just at that point I didn't even think she was in on it. So I'm just like
you're right though. You're right.
yeah, it's like but it's like you're making all of this about you. He's telling you he's uneasy about things and he's saying, oh, you're just gonna leave me here? Like, it's your family house. What do you mean leave you here?
Yeah, and you've been making me uncomfortable since I got here. So Delisha was like, you know what, let's go, man.
Yeah.
We'll come. Well, yeah.
So she tells him, let's go home. She'll make up an excuse. They say their I love yous. They walk back to the house, and all the guests are leaving. The whole family, including the staff, is just creepily waiting for Chris and Rose to walk into the house. Like they're just staring.
Oh, it's game time.
Yeah. So Chris is staring at himself in the mirror, and I'm sure he's wondering, like, what circumstances or life choices did I make that brought me here? So then he sends a picture of LaKeith to Rod, and then he chuckles. Just like it felt like a throwaway thing for him to do. And almost immediately, Rod calls him, and he says, "That's Dre." And Chris tells Rod that he's different from tells him that he's different, and he showed up to the party with a woman 30 years older than him. And Rod yells out, "Sex slave!" It's like
that's what's going on nowadays. So hey,
yeah. So he tells him to get his ass out of there because he's in some eyes wide shut shit. Then the call drops. Rose walks in and tells Chris that they're going to leave now. So she says okay and tells Chris to finish packing. When she leaves the room, Chris checks out. Like there's like this little nook in the side of the room that has been bugging him for a while. And he goes in and he sees like a little red box. And he opens it and he sees pictures. Then he sees pictures of Rose. Then he sees pictures of Rose with a black dude. That's not me. Of Rose with several black dudes. And finally, he sees a picture of Rose with the groundskeeper, but he has like full facial hair this time. And then, just in case that wasn't creepy enough, he sees a picture of Rose with Georgina. And Chris is like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what is going on?
The original OnlyFans right there.
What is going on? So he closes the door to the little nook, and Rose is standing right there. And he asks her for the keys that he wants to go drop the stuff off in the trunk.
Yeah, because you know what you did, man. You can like, come on, man.
At this point, I'm just like, I'm trying to rationalize it in my head at this point. Like, okay, she lied about you being the first black guy she dated. Okay,
I'm surprised they didn't call her out in front of her. Dan, like, what is this?
Well, again, he's just like trying to be out.
Yeah, he's scared. Like this some got that black vibes in him. Like
he's like, okay, like you dated a lot of black guys, but that's not the focus right now. So they head downstairs, and Jeremy's standing in front of the door with a lacrosse stick, asking where they're going. And Missy asks if anyone wants tea. Chris says they're leaving, and Rose comes up with an excuse about the dog being sick. So at this point, I'm still like, she's on his side. The fact that she came up with the excuse, like, okay. So Chris is asking Rose for the keys, and she's still searching. So the brother with the lacrosse stick, he starts to twirl it, like he's about to start something.
Yeah.
And Dean is just standing there by the fireplace, and he asks Chris, "What is your purpose?" And while Dean is talking about like fire and humanity and immortality and cocoons, and now Chris is just yelling at Rose to give him the keys.
Like, I don't care about that. I need to get out of there.
Rose, give me the keys. Then Jeremy swings the stick at Chris, and he dodges it, and Rose yells at him. So the family's getting closer to him, and he asks Rose one more time for the keys. And then she stops pretending, and she holds up the keys, and he's like, "You know I can't give you the keys, babe." And Chris is just like, what happened?
Tell me that's not like the greatest face switch.
That was it, because her face just went blank. Like all the emotions drained out of her face. And she's like, "You know I can't." And Chris is like, "Oh, my enemies have caught me. My enemies have found me in New York.
Don't do."
My enemies have caught up to me. So now Chris is looking around like, I don't enter one chance. So he decides to take Jeremy on, and as they go to like grapple to wrestle, and then Missy taps the teacup 3 times, And then Chris drops like a sack of potatoes.
Man, I felt bad for him. Like once he jumped, like man, it's over now that they can easily just control you that way.
And then Missy tells Jeremy and Dean to take Chris downstairs. And then we see Chris falling into the sunken place again. And then as his eyes are closing, Rose tells him that he was one of her favorites. I'm like, is that supposed to make him feel better? What?
That's what I was saying. Like it's like so like man, all of them was psychos.
There was definitely an attachment, I feel
like like she probably fought it for like 2 seconds, like maybe.
But then she's like, nah, the plan is the plan. Like
the plan is the plan. You're black. You're part of the plan.
So Rod is outside the airport calling Chris's phone, and it's going to voicemail. So Rod goes over to Chris's place to go feed the dog, and he calls Chris again, straight to voicemail. So Rod decides to get in his detective bag, and it's like he's going to figure out if there's any suspicious news about LaKeith. So he starts Googling, and he sees a bunch of missing articles, like the Dre being I think it was like a jazz musician in their rally who's been missing. So now cut back to Rose's basement, and Chris wakes up and he's strapped to a chair, and he's like trying to use his teeth to loosen the straps, but they double strap that shit. Like, and you got to be a vampire to use your teeth to get out of it.
That's what it was touching his arms and the arms. Like, hey, let's see how strong you are.
Yeah, let's measure. So there's a deer head mounted on the wall, and underneath it there's this old ass box TV, and then it turns on. And then we get like this racist science exposition. Just basically now they're basically explaining the plot to us.
Yeah, might as well tell you because you know this is it's inevitable.
So and it's clearly meant to be like old footage. So it's like, hi, I'm Roman Armitage, and if you're watching this, you're probably wondering what's going on, but there's no need to worry. You've been chosen because of the physical advantages you've enjoyed your entire lifetime. With your natural gifts and our natural determination, we could both be part of something greater, something perfect. And then he goes on to describe the whole coagula procedure and how they've been working on it for years, and it's finally been perfected by his own flesh and blood. And it's a service they provide to members of their group. And then the rest of the Armitage family comes into view, and it looks like it was like 20 to 30 years in the past. And then the video ends, and then we see a teacup appears. The spoon circles it 3 times, and Chris passes out.
So it's kind of like they have to do that multiple times to get that mind fully like wrapped into the procedure they're trying to do. Because that man fell asleep so many times.
He was out.
Cold.
Yeah. So cut back to Rod, and he's petting Chris's dog, but now he's talking to a cop. And that cop is Maxine from Living Single. That's Maxine from Living Single. She tells him that TSA matters should be brought up to your authorizing officer. And he says, no, this is not TSA business. So she asks him how she can help. And he says his boy Chris has been missing for 2 days. And like she quickly grabs a pen, like, oh, your son? And it's like, oh, no, not my son, not my son. My friend Chris, he's 26. And as he's explaining himself that Chris went away for a weekend with his girlfriend, she's just staring at him, staring dead at him, no words. And then he says she's white. And then she kind of like sits up a little bit, like, okay, now I'm interested in this story. Like, okay, he went away. Like, so now he's explaining how Chris was supposed to come back earlier and he's been watching Chris's dog. He holds up the dog, and it says how Chris found LaKeith, who was presumed missing. And Maxine is starting to lose patience. So Rod just finally lays out the entire theory that he believes that they have been abducting Black people, brainwashing them, and making them work as sex slaves. And then she tells him, just hold on 1 second. Now we have 2 other detectives in the room listening. And Rod retells the story. And then he throws in how TSA agents might even know more than detectives because, you know, we deal with some terrorist shit. And then he finishes his story. And all 3 detectives burst out laughing. I was like,
you didn't get the cue when she brought in 2 more people?
Because when she sat up and she's like, okay, you mentioned the white girl. I thought she was like actually giving him like the time of day. Like, no, she's like, she basically did the other officers a favor by bringing them this funny story. So now Rod is back home scribbling notes, trying to figure out what happened to Chris. And if you pay close attention, he crosses out magic as one of the explanations on his notepad. He crosses out magic. I thought that was a nice touch. So he's using his own deductive reasoning, and he has eliminated magic. Like, magic cannot be the reason. So we're moving on from that. So he decides to call Chris's phone, and Rose picks up, saying Chris, as like, because she's sneaky like that. And Rod asks her where Chris is, and she says, "Oh, he left 2 days ago." And all I could focus on was the very suspicious white turtleneck that she was wearing. Like, I don't know if the turtleneck itself is suspicious or is just confirmation bias, but that turtleneck just is just like like you could have chosen anything else. So she cooks up a story about how Chris was paranoid, and he caught a cab, and he left his phone and left her. So she's like faking all the requisite emotions, and then Rod mentions Chris hasn't come home, and he's been calling, and he even went to the police. So now, like, Rose is really concerned. She's like, "Oh, what did you say?" And he said that he told them that Chris was missing. And she says, "Oh, good." I'm like, is that the right response? Is that?
And also too, I'm like, how does she get away with it? Because at the end of the day, Chris told Rod, like, "Okay, I'm leaving with this person," and then goes disappear. How do you like, you know what I'm saying?
She's like, "Oh, good." So now it seems like Rod is putting 2 and 2 together after that, and he seems to be getting 5.
Exactly. I'm like,
so he asked Rose, what cab company did Chris call? And now she's scrambling. She's like, "Oh, maybe he called a local one, or maybe he called an Uber." And she's like, "Oh, I'm so confused." I'm like, "Come on,
you don't know what your boyfriend called when he left?"
So Rod says, "Oh, you're confused," and he says, "Oh, hold on one second." And he starts hyping himself up. He's like, "Yeah, my TSA shit was tingling. Yeah, I knew it." So he's coming up with the plan to how he's going to record her on the phone and all that. So he puts the phone on speaker, and then he hits record, and she immediately flips the script on him. She tells him that she knows he's calling because he has a thing for her. And Rod is like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, he's dumbfounded, he's befuddled, he's flabbergasted. And Rod is denying it. It's like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And then she's like, she knows, I know you think about fucking me, Rod. I'm like,
what?
And Rod is like losing his shit, and he just hangs up. He's like, "Oh, she's a genius."
She got me.
Give her credit. He's like, give her credit and all that.
Especially when they're recording, like she probably think it was recording, like, "Oh, I'm gonna sell this."
Mm-hmm. So now we see all of her family was actually creepily watching her throughout the phone call. I'm like, everything is just a joint venture with you people. Oh,
they got it down to the science. Like, okay, this is what, like the 6th time.
Mm-hmm. So now cut back to Chris in the basement. He wakes up shackled to the chair again. The old TV comes on, and the blind guy who won the auction shows up, and he's talking to Chris. Apparently, the TV now has intercom capabilities. He tells Chris that he's one of the lucky ones because Jeremy has a less pleasant method of procuring his subjects. That then reminded me of, remember, he goes for the choke, and remember how LaKeith was taken initially.
Yeah, they literally kidnap you. Like, forget it. But that's why they messed up. If they like stuck with the crazy method of like kidnapping them, nobody would know. But the fact that it went the nice way, eventually we'll talk about it. Think about it.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. So he says he's there to answer any outstanding questions and about the process, because a better understanding increases the odds of success of the procedure.
Mm-hmm.
So now we get some science jargon about how phase 1 was the hypnotism, and phase 2 is the conversation that they're having right now, and that's the mental preparation, which is basically like psychological pre-op. And then
like, it's gonna happen whether you like it or not, but let's make it comfortable.
I'm just trying. He's like, matter of fact, I'm trying to help you, Chris. So and then phase 3 is transplantation. And it's like, well, it's a partial one, because the part like a piece of the brain that's connected to the nervous system still needs to stay intact. So a sliver of him will be in there in the background, but his existence will be as a passenger. And
Man,
then
that's some sickening stuff right there, man.
yeah. So then Chris starts to have flashbacks of his encounters with Georgina and LaKeith, and now he's putting it together for them. Like he could see those cracks in their own like mentality where things were like almost seeping through, and then they had to go reset. So while they're talking about it, then Chris says that he's basically explained that Chris is going to be living in the sunken place, and Chris asks why they chose black people. And this is where Jim, the blind guy, is trying to separate himself from everybody else. He's like, yeah, some people want to be stronger, faster, or cool, but he shouldn't lump him in with them. He's like,
I'm the nicer, sophisticated.
Yeah, as if his motives are more noble. He says he doesn't care what skin color Chris is, but he says that the one thing that he wants is deeper, and he wants his eye. He wants those things that he sees through. And then the call ends. So Chris notices that he has scratched like the armrest of the chair he's been strapped to, and like the little cotton fluff is sticking out. Moments later, the TV comes back on. The teacup is there again, and as the spoon swirls, Chris is like, no,
out.
And because he knows what's about to happen, he passes out. So Jim, the blind guy, is ready prepped in the OR, and there's an empty operating table right next to him for Chris, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So Dean says a quick prayer onto his hands.
Such a weird, The entire movie, man, that guy was one of a kind.
Yeah, and then he puts on his surgical mask. Jeremy's wearing scrubs, and he brings him like the rest of his surgical instruments. So Dean starts to cut open Jim's skull with a scalpel. So I'm guessing just like the skin around the skull. And Jeremy gets a wheelchair to go pick up Chris. Chris is passed out. So Jeremy starts to unstrap his arms. And then we cut back to Dean. Now he's using a saw on Jim's skull. Then cut back to Jeremy unstrapping Chris's legs. And he's like adjusting the IV bag that's attached to the wheelchair that he brought in. And then out of nowhere, Chris smashes his head with a croquet ball. And I'm like, they couldn't have used a small ass pool ball. It had to be croquet because it's some rich shit. Like that's what it had to be. Like this is a rich sport, not pool in your little game room. This is croquet, and we keep our instruments inside.
Absolutely.
So he's Jeremy's squirming on the floor, and then Chris hits him again. All that squirming stops. Then Chris eyes the deer head that was mounted on the wall. Then we see Chris take out the cotton from his ears.
Man, Chris was in his bag, man.
Yeah. I remember a lot of people were trying to make connections. Oh, like a black man picking cotton, and cotton is what saved him, and all that. Let's not get too deep into
Let's not go over that, man. It's just it made sense what it was.
Just what the furniture is made with or whatever.
That's fine. That makes sense. Leave it like
just
that.
Keep it moving. So now Dean has like successfully cut the top of Jim's skull off, but he's wondering where Jeremy is because like he should be back by now.
Yeah.
So he steps out of the OR and looks down the long hallway because this is the basement apparently.
They got an old hospital. You said OR. They got an old hospital in that basement.
Yeah, that big ass basement. He looks down one side, and as he looks to the other side, Chris runs up on him and gores him with the deer head right up the neck. Like efficient.
I know everybody screaming in that movie theater. I did.
Very efficient way. He's not making any noise. That's game over for him. We're not seeing him like we know for a fact we're not seeing him again throughout the movie. That was it. Last day of filming. That was it. And then as all that's happening, like he's like falling to the ground. One of the candles in the OR gets knocked over and like lights a sheet on fire. And I'm thinking to myself, that wasn't very safe from the beginning. Why is there an open flame in the OR? Like, is that just for ambiance?
It's just a makeshift hospital in an old building, so they can't really do so much. So
bro, you have lights. Like, you don't need the candle.
But then again, they don't expect, Chris to come out there. At that point, it's like, ambience, like you said, and we're just going to do this transfer.
So now, so I'm like, even if there wasn't any, like, racist, like, pseudoscience at play, like, that was just not very, like, a fire marshal would have shut that down. Like
Also,
if he had done any
you doing neurosurgery in 1800
by,
house.
by candlelight though.
Hey, listen, if you can do neurosurgery in bottom basement of somebody's house, are you really worried about the candles? See,
I mean,
is it
you know what?
sanitized?
They had other things to worry about.
Yes,
Other things to
absolutely.
worry about. So now Chris walks up the stairs and he sees Georgina just knitting in the kitchen, and then she's startled and she runs off. Like, okay, that was weird. I thought she was going to attack at that point. So now he grabs a cell phone off the dining table, and as he's walking, he sees Missy in another room. They lock eyes, and then they both stare at a teacup. I'm like, this is the first time I've ever seen people look at a teacup like it's a loaded weapon. Like, like it's like there's a gun on the table, and they both dive at it too.
that's essentially everybody's favorite Anastasia.
Bruh,
Tea in the teacup.
bruh, they lunge at it, and Chris smacks the teacup away. Then Missy picks up a letter opener, and she stabs Chris right in the palm.
Mm-hmm.
And he honestly he took that shit like a G. He didn't like no sound, no nothing.
The adrenaline is like full blown Super Saiyan right now. Like,
So
I'm ready.
so they're struggling, and eventually he actually like stabs her with the knife, like the letter opener, through his hand.
Mm-hmm.
So he stabs her in the face with his hand through. I was like, Jordan Peele was on some other stuff with
I was
that
about
one.
to say the action scene is like we're gonna go all the way through this part
So
of the
now
movie.
he's walking to the front door, and you can see like smoke filling up the house, and Jeremy comes out of nowhere, and now they're struggling. Every time he has him in a headlock, so every time Chris tries to open the door, Jeremy kicks it closed. So like again, this is the same headlock that he put LaKeith in at the beginning of the movie that took him down. Chris is starting to lose consciousness a bit, but you know they're talking about that whole jujitsu stuff now about it being mind over strength or whatever.
Yeah.
So as he reaches for the door again, Jeremy puts up his leg, stabs him with the letter opener, and I think that was what just took everything out of Jeremy. He's down. He's like it don't do a beg. Like I'm not even trying to get up.
Like, you got it, man. I
And
was forced to do it.
yeah, and I thought Chris was going to leave. Now he turns back and he stomps the shit out of Jeremy.
Bro.
Like he's trying to crush a watermelon. He stomps it until there's no movement again, no noise, no movement, nothing, just silence. Like
That was the stress of being in that house for that many days, and all this sort of been was like, it's gonna end with you.
Oh man. So now he gets the car keys out of Jeremy's pocket, and then we cut to Rose up in her room. And honestly, I think this was some of the creepiest shit in this movie. And she's listening to Time of My Life. That's the song from Dirty Dancing.
Mm-hmm.
That she's listening to Dirty Dancing is not the creepy part. Is that she's eating Fruit Loops dry, and she's drinking milk through a straw.
I don't know what to say to that part. Like,
so I have a fun fact for you. Did you know that Fruit Loops are all the same flavor regardless of the color?
No way.
All Fruit Loops are the same flavor, whether it's purple, yellow, red, green.
Blue.
They are. So the flavor is like a mixture of a lot of flavors. So each color.
Yeah.
So you might taste lemon, you might taste apple, but they all have the exact same flavor.
So just coloring, that's it. Everything. I did not know. But then again, when you're taking a bite,
yeah, you think
wow, that's crazy.
You think red is strawberry. You think they're all the exact same flavor.
And she's in it, and then drinking straw to the side.
Yeah. So now she's so again, it keeps getting creepier because she's not even using Google at this point. She's using Bing as her search engine.
How much did they pay for that product placement? Because they're still trying to get alongside Google.
Hey, so and then she types in top NCAA prospects.
So that part was like, oh god.
Bruh, it's like now she's basically shopping for her next target.
She's going next level. All right, I need me.
Yeah, it's like exactly. She's trying to get even a better physical specimen.
But you know what's funny about that though? There's a lot of, obviously we see nowadays like so much interaction, like especially with the black athletes. It's like always. So that's what Jordan Peele put in there. Like, yep, let's get one of them.
He's telling him stay woke. So then she takes some very vigorous swigs of her milk. I was like, again, so creepy.
She loves the milk.
So creepy. So Chris gets into the white sports car, the car from the very beginning of the movie. That's it right there. Then he calls 911, telling them he's at the Armitage house. And as he's leaving the property, Georgina jumps in front of the car. I was like, oh, there she is. And then I guess Rose finally heard the crash over her music. And so now Chris is looking back at Georgina on the floor and is getting flashbacks to the day his mom died. And basically trying to convince himself to just go and leave her there. But he goes back and gets her and puts Georgina in the car. So Rose comes out of the house with a rifle and she sees them drive off. And she says, Grandma. Like, oh, okay. So now Chris is driving and Georgina starts to regain consciousness. She looks over at him slowly. And then we get the reveal of her scar across her hairline.
Yeah.
And that explains why she's always so fussy about her hair or whatever. And then she yells at Chris, you ruined my house. And she's pointing him, clawing at him, and they crash into a tree. Georgina / Granny killed on impact.
Grandma.
Yeah, killed on impact. Seatbelts save lives. That's our little PSA here.
Hey, absolutely. Never leave your house without seatbelt, man.
Do you have your seatbelt in the house?
Hey, man, I'm trying to help you with the PSA, man. I had to put my own 2 cents.
You could have just said stay strapped.
Even worse. Well, sometimes, anyways. No.
Okay, back to the movie.
Let's not go.
Back to the movie. So Chris is dazed. He's looking at the side mirror, and then Rose shoots it off. Chris stumbles out the car, and Rose lets off another shot. Like she is deadly with that thing. Man,
Rose became a whole new person, just like that.
Yeah,
plus she's done this a couple times, you know.
Hey, she's had practice. So, Chris is power walking as Rose reloads, and then we hear footsteps, and then we see the groundskeeper running at full speed, and Rose just says, "Get him, Grandpa." What? You've made your whole family black, essentially.
Yeah.
And Grandpa tackles Chris to the ground, and Rose walks up to them with a rifle pointed, and then like groundskeeper / Grandpa is squeezing Chris's skull. Like he's not even choking him. He's like trying to crush his skull.
Yeah.
And then we finally see the groundskeeper without his hat, and then we see his scar as well. Chris is reaching for his pocket, and he manages to pull out his phone in the middle of the struggle. He snaps a picture of Grandpa, and that like stuns him. Like he's like incapacitated, and then Grandpa sort of resets, and he walks up to Rose and gets the rifle, and because he asks for it, he's like, "Let me do it."
Yeah. So
Rose gives Grandpa.
I know at that part that clearly with the flash because of LaKeith earlier. I know at that part that he's not his grandpa's self, you know.
Yeah. So he gets the rifle, and Chris is like, so as he does that, he's been reset. He shoots Rose in the stomach, and then Chris is confused. He's like, he didn't think it was going to have that effect. He just thought it was going to slow him down. So then we see a tear rolling down Grandpa's face. Grandpa reloads the gun and then shoots himself in the head.
Shout out to him. Like you're not about to use
the
2 seconds you gave me in this world. I'm out. Man.
He's like, I'm out. He's like, because again, remember, he's been a passenger inside his own body this whole time.
That's such a scary feeling, man, that in your own body you're a passenger. That's some weird shit.
So now we see that Rose isn't dead and she's reaching for the rifle, but Chris gets to it first. And then she starts to tell Chris, "I'm so sorry. It's me. I love you." And Chris starts choking her. Like he's like, now he's going like sicko mode. Like just, and
I'm surprised Jordan Peele put that scene. That's such a, you don't get that a lot in the movies, that black and white crime.
Yeah.
Especially of the.
He had to go there. And then as he's choking her, I'm like, I take back what I said before. Like, this is the creepiest scene because the look on her face when she's being choked, it's almost like she's satisfied with what is happening because she's not struggling. She almost breaks into a smile in the middle of it. Like she doesn't struggle anything. And then
it sounds like they've done it a couple of times, though.
Yeah, like it's not even like she's holding his hands on her neck,
Yeah.
but she's not trying to remove them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like she's just almost like it's like, oh wow, I didn't know you had it in you type thing. Like but Chris somehow stops himself and he stops choking her, and now they're just staring at each other. And then we see a siren. I'm like, a cop. This is just a cop car. Because remember when he left the house, he called
Yeah.
that he was leaving the Armitage house.
And they got
And
stopped by the police officer too when
yeah,
they.
so I'm like, a black man crouching over a white woman in the middle of the road. The white woman is covered in blood. There's
No
another black
explanation
man.
needed.
Yeah, there's
No.
another black man dead next to them. There's a crashed car in the background with a dead body. Like, you have to admit, like, this is just a terrible,
You
terrible
come in a
scene.
gun blazing.
Yeah. And then you hear Rose she's weakly calling out for help. And I'm like, oh, like he's definitely screwed at this point. And at that point, Chris is like, he already has his hands up. He knows what time it is. And I was like, shit. Like, and then the car door opens and we see airport, the word airport on it. And then Rod steps out. I was like, oh, that's my man. Oh, Chris can't believe it. Rose can't believe it. Chris stumbles over to the car and gets in, and they're just in silence for about 10 seconds. And then Rod says, I mean, I told you not to go into that house. And then Chris asks Rod how he found him. Rod says,
I'm TS motherfucking A. We handle shit. That's what we do. Consider this situation fucking handle.
And then Rod makes a U-turn and drives away. And then Rose, she dies like in a very creepy manner, like just like you can see the life like slowly leaving her eyes. And then end credits.
And she was satisfied with that. Like I said, when she started getting choked, she was like, "That's some weird stuff right there, man. That's some like you've done so much sickness shit in your life that when it's your turn, it's like, yeah, I deserve this shit."
She wasn't fighting it or anything. So I'm gonna get into our trivia. But before that, I want to get into. Did you hear about the alternate ending?
No, that an alternate ending.
Yeah. So I actually watched this alternate ending. I'm not entirely sure where, but essentially it was in the alternate ending, the first ending, like the original ending. It was a cop that actually pulled up.
Oh,
yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So a cop actually pulled up, and then we see Chris in jail. And Rod comes to visit him, and he's like talking about how like basically life is over for him. Yeah, so that was the initial one.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, that one was like it's over. Like leave it at that scene.
It was too dark, I think. Like he said that one was too dark for like when in the initial screenings.
It was too dark. Like you got arrested.
Yeah, no, like they felt like after everything he had been through, like having him go through all of that and then end like not have a happy ending essentially.
Oh yeah,
a happy ending. It's just that you went through all that suffering, only to suffer some more,
and to end up in jail, and then you're not coming out because you killed so many people. But everybody can put two and two together, like them walking away from that castle, like at the end of the day. But yeah, I'm glad they didn't put that part. Like leave it on a high note.
Let me give you some of the other trivia. So Jordan Peele directed Allison Williams, that's who plays Rose, to think of her role as two completely separate characters. Rose, Chris's fun and loyal girlfriend, and Roro, the cruel and heartless sociopath. He said he was more concerned about her ability to play both at the same time in the scene when she's on the phone with Rod, in which she has Roro's face and mannerisms while sounding like Rose. Peele added it was absolutely essential that the audience believe Chris and Rose are in love at the beginning of the movie without any suspicion.
Wow, she nailed it. Like if it was gonna give more Oscars out for that movie, she nailed it because the way she switched around That was amazing. She was good.
So remember the part where the police asked for Chris's ID.
Mm-hmm.
One of the trivia is like Rose isn't sticking up for Chris when she argues with the police officer about showing ID. She's avoiding a paper trail. Had the cop run both of their licenses, there would have been a record that Chris and Rose were together before his eventual disappearance.
I guess, but yeah, but I think at the end of the day, if the cop wanted to, she would have. But I feel like the cop knew Rose because that's that side of town. But that can make sense. I guess that
Wait, but
makes sense.
remember, she doesn't live there. She only visits.
She's the daughter of the freaking filthy rich, wealthy.
Yeah. Remember, everybody there is wealthy.
Exactly. So I'm sure they know Rose because it's not the first time Rose is bringing a black man in town.
Yeah.
So the cop is probably like, "Who's this black guy? Let me just," you know what I'm saying?
But they don't normally hit deer on the way to the house.
That is true too.
Yeah.
But I mean, they ran it; it would be in the system. By the end of the day, no matter what, if the alternate ending shows, that makes sense too because you can't, as a black man, kill all these folks in the house and there ain't gonna be no trail. Especially when Lil Rod or Lil Rel TSA talking to everybody about his friend is missing and the girlfriend. Like,
Yeah,
but yeah, I get it.
But remember, LaKeith was missing too. Nothing happened.
He got kidnapped, so black man getting kidnapped. Like, who's searching?
Wow.
Hey, let's be honest. Compared to Lil Rose getting kidnapped,
you're right. You're right.
Exactly.
So let's see. Jordan Peele said that the title is also a reference to what we often hear black audiences shout at the screen while watching horror films, yelling at a character to get out. In this movie, Rod and Andre both say it to Chris.
That was good because yes, when we have black folks in horror movies, like that's what they're saying. They say if it was black people, we're not staying around. We're not. Oh my God, what is it? No, we out. We getting out. Yeah, that was a good title. That's one of those movies that the title made sense with the movie.
It says, due to the success of this film, Jordan Peele became the first African-American film writer, producer, and director to write, produce, and direct a film debut that earned more than $200 million in the worldwide box office.
Yeah, he hit the nail in the head. Like that's why all the other movies, like was it Us and Nope?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I know you got another one coming out soon. I don't remember the name, but
I think it's coming out in 2025.
Yeah, he's not like the writer, but he's the producer. I forgot.
No, he's writing and directing.
Really?
Yeah, his next thing coming out 2025. He's writing and directing it, but he's not letting any details out about it. Like
there was one that he did that just came out that it was not a writer, but he had his name next to it. I forgot. I don't know if it's on streaming services, but the point is
he does a lot of writing for other stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, he does a lot of writing and producing for other stuff, like Monkey Man. I think is what you're talking about.
Oh yes, Monkey Man. That one.
Dev Patel. Yeah, he produced it.
That's a good movie too. Okay,
but that one was already done. It was when Dev Patel was shopping it that Jordan Peele attached himself to it.
I'm glad he did because that's
so he wasn't attached throughout the production of like filming of the movie.
That's exactly the one I was talking about. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure, and that's what I like about him. He keeps the suspense. But like I said, when it was doing Keener and Peele, I thought it was just straight comedy, writer, producer. Then out of nowhere, boom, yeah, we go Get Out. And it was like, wait, what? Jordan Peele?
Yeah. Lil Rel ad-libbed majority of his funny lines. I'm like, when you get someone like that, like comedians, like you just give them the scene, like the scenario or whatever, and they'll run with it.
Yeah, you don't want to give him lines like he was good. He had limited time and just say go for it, man, just to have fun.
The movie was initially supposed to be shot in Los Angeles, but because of budget cuts, they had to shoot in Mobile, Alabama.
Yeah, that's what the budget was, 4.5. You do LA, that's $40 million just because it's LA. I'm glad he gave 4.5 million for Alabama.
This I thought this was a funny bit of trivia. So they were like, when they were trying to cast extras in the movie, they had a hard time. They had a hard time getting Japanese, like a Japanese actor in that location. Imagine, because of course they're in Mobile, Alabama. So they got the head of a martial arts studio. That guy is not an actor. He's I think they said he's the father. He's either the father of or a friend of one of Jordan Peele's friends. So Ken Marino, he's also an actor and comedian. So he was able to get that guy to come on set. So like he's not even a trained actor. Yeah.
I was about to know that you said that. It makes sense because it was not good, but he played the part right.
Yeah.
I can tell.
So yeah, so it says the guy who plays he's not an actor but a noted karate master, and the guy actually lives in Birmingham, Alabama, about 4 hours north, and he runs a World Oyama Karate organization, and
Hey,
he's the
that's
father-in-law. He's the father-in-law of Jordan Peele's friend.
Oh, that's dope. Hey, that's 10K right there for that couple seconds, a couple minutes. Compared to if it was in LA, you gotta get a A-list or Z-list, and that's 100K for. Hey man, he's a smart guy. People need to get out of LA and.
I mean,
but like I said,
he only had one line.
Yeah, literally, that's it.
Yeah, one line. Asked him what is he? He asked him, what is it easier or harder being an African American in today's society?
That's it. And then guess what? He probably get profit from the back end too. So.
Oh no, I don't know. They're not giving him no damn profit.
You sure?
Nah, they're not giving what?
Or maybe they just give him the one time at the beginning. Yeah. Yes, 10K. Say this line. All right.
Yeah, they call it like there's like a daily rate that they
for like extras.
So, yeah, so I don't even know if it's up to that 10K, Seth, but yeah, and then the final
he's happy.
Regardless. And then the final piece of trivia I have here is domestically, the film became the highest grossing debut horror film based on an original screenplay, dethroning the Blair Witch Project. Remember that movie?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big destroy because Blair Witch budget was like, well, maybe 200,000.
Yeah, it was I don't even think it was up to 100K. I think it was like 40K.
Yeah. And
but
it was amazing.
Became the highest grossing debut horror film because Blair Witch made 140 million. Yeah.
Shit.
Imagine.
Damn. Isn't that something like Paranormal Activity? The first one, the budget was like, I think it was like 10-15K, and that ended up making millions of dollars too as well.
I think it was a bit more, but it was based on the success of Blair Witch.
Wow.
Yeah, Paranormal Activity. Because a lot of these things are also Blumhouse. So they've figured out the whole use your low budget and then figure things out as you go.
Yeah, as long as Blumhouse don't sell their soul to Disney, because Disney like to do $400 million budget for crap. Like all those Disney Plus shows.
Do you think Disney's gonna go along with the horror?
No, but all their Disney Plus shows are horror to me because it's all whack. But anyways, topic for another day.
You said Paranormal Activity. Yeah, the budget was 15K.
I knew it was like they used like a handheld camera.
Yeah, handheld. Yep.
Damn.
And then it made over 107 million.
No wonder most of them actors and directors not doing anything. They just enjoying everything. Because they all signed the back end and they're all getting crazy money, so they're good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the directors and they're the ones that are in charge of the Insidious franchise.
Series. Yeah. And that's never stopping. They just keep going and going and going. Jesus, I'm tired of it. After the second one, I stopped watching. Like,
I don't do horror.
Oh, you don't do horror?
Oh, no, I don't do horror.
Horror to me now is not horror no more. It's just all CGI, so I don't get scared no more. Because back in the days, like, practical but now you can watch a horror and laugh because the CGI is so bad and the storyline is so basic. But anyways, to each his own.
I want to start something new where we're asking if the movie that you've just gone through, classic or not. What do you think?
Oh, classic.
Absolute classic. No.
Absolute classic because it's one of its kind. It's like it's an original screenplay. Like I don't need to elaborate. It's classic.
Okay. All right. So all right, there you have it. And I want to thank you all for listening to WAP at the Movies. This episode on Get Out. We're going to try and do this again sometime soon. When I cannot say for sure, but I want to thank Bayo for joining us again. You have joined the Repeat Offenders Club. Thank you for joining us. And please, if you've gotten to this point, please rate, review, subscribe, share it with a friend if you enjoyed it. Share it with an enemy if you don't. Just make sure you're sharing. And we're going to do this again. Thank you.
Like, share, subscribe. Let's support my guy. Thanks for having me, man.
Appreciate it. All right, man.